Hola estudiantes, este es el tema 12.1, los pronombres relativos. In this lesson we are going to talk about relative pronouns which we use both in English and in Spanish. Despite the fact that we have several pronouns, we are going to focus on a few of those that I'm going to specify in the next slides. Now, relative pronouns are used to combine two sentences or two clauses on a statement that share a common element. And don't worry about it so far. I'm going to explain everything in this explanation. And just remember that these relative pronouns are used to clarify or to combine two sentences that share one particular element, okay? And these can be a noun or a pronoun. So for example, if the subject is the same subject for both sentences, this sentence can be combined. And let's look at the following diagram. Okay, so we have two sentences over here. We're talking about my parents gave me a vacuum cleaner. Mis padres me regalaron la aspiradora. Okay? And then I'm talking about the vacuum cleaner that works very well. La aspiradora funciona muy bien. So if I want to combine these two statements and I want to make a full statement that shares this same subject, I can do something like we see over here. La aspiradora que mis padres me regalaron funciona muy bien. The vacuum cleaner that my parents gave me works very well. Works really well. Okay, so in this case we are talking about the same vacuum cleaner. We are talking about the same subject, and that's why we are able to combine these two clauses or these two statements in one longer statement that provides an explanation or a clarification. So I'm not talking just about any random vacuum cleaner. I'm specifically talking about the one that my parents gave me. Okay, so if you can see in English we have something very similar, and we have it over here. The vacuum cleaner that my parents gave me works really well. Let's look at a different example. Lourdes es muy inteligente. Lourdes estudia español. So we can substitute Lourdes in the second one over here. We can also say, if we want to keep it in two different sentences, we can say Lourdes es muy inteligente, ella estudia español. But these are two separate clauses. What about we want to combine these two and make it just one full statement? Lourdes, quien estudia español, es muy inteligente. So you can see in here that we are using two commas in here because we are providing a clarification in these between these two commas, okay? So we are saying Lourdes, quien estudia español, es muy inteligente. Okay? Actually, we can also combine this in a different way, and we can say Lourdes, quien es muy inteligente, estudia español. So it will depend on the piece of information that we want to emphasize. And in parentheses, in commas, we will put some extra information, some additional information, or some information that clarifies who specifically I'm talking about, okay? And maybe you might be thinking you want to keep these two separate in two separate statements, but actually in Spanish, this is something very common that we do, okay? We use longer sentences than in English, and usually we do this a lot. We combine several statements to make a longer statement that goes, that blends in with the whole context that we are talking about. Okay, let's look at these two pictures. In this one it says, eso fue todo lo que dijimos. That was all what we said. So then again, we are referring to what we said, and instead we are going to say lo que dijimos. That was all what we said, okay? So there are maybe some stories that we said, some lies that we said, some facts that we said, and this lo que is substituting that information that we said, and it's a little bit more ambiguous. We are not saying specifically what we said, but we are giving that information in this statement. Mi papá se lleva bien con Juan Carlos, quien es como mi hermano. My dad gets along very well with Juan Carlos, who is like my brother. So I want to clarify that relationship that I have with Juan Carlos, and I'm joining these two statements. My dad gets along well with Juan Carlos, and on the other hand, I have Juan Carlos is like my brother. So we can see that Juan Carlos is going to be the same subject for both statements. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine them because, like I told you, this is something very common that Spanish speakers do. So like I told you before, we have several relative pronouns, but this time we're going to focus on 3 of them, and you're going to have them here in this little table. And we have que, we have quien, and lo que. Okay, so you're going to see on the second one we have es, because of course we also have to make sure that this matches singular or plural. Que, quienes, or quien, lo que. Okay, so in here you have to pay attention that quien it's only going to refer to people, and que refers to items or things, but also it can refer to people. Now, however, that is not going to happen with quien. Quien will always only relate to people, okay? So these are the 3 more frequent relative pronouns, and in interrogative words we are going to have an accent. So that's why you have to make sure that whenever we use them in a statement, these are not going to carry an accent. They carry an accent only when they go in a question, okay? So then again, here you have them. Que, quien, quienes, lo que. Que is the most frequently used relative pronoun. It can refer to things or to people, like I previously said, unlike its English counterpart, that. Que is never omitted. So we have already established that que in English means that, okay? Like if we go back to that first example of the vacuum cleaner, mis padres me regalaron la aspiradora, that then becomes, in these statements, la aspiradora que mis padres me regalaron, the vacuum cleaner that my parents gave me. Okay, so that is the most common, that's what we have said. And in English, it can be omitted. In Spanish, it's never omitted, okay? So here we have 2 examples. ¿Dónde está la cafetera que compré? In English, we can say, where is the coffee maker that I bought? Or we can say, where is the coffee maker I bought? Okay? It sounds good, it sounds well, it's acceptable in both forms. However, in Spanish, you could not skip it and then just say, ¿Dónde está la cafetera compré? That wouldn't make sense. El hombre que limpia es Pedro. Let's go to the second example. And then it says, the man who is cleaning is Pedro. Okay? We cannot say el hombre limpia es Pedro. That wouldn't make sense. So we have to say el hombre que limpia es Pedro. The man who is cleaning is Pedro. Now, in here you also have that example that I was also explaining, that que can also be used to refer to people, okay? So we can actually say, el hombre quien limpia es Pedro. That is perfect, that is acceptable as well. That was the word. That is perfectly acceptable. That's what I wanted to say. However, if we go to this one, if we go back to that first example again, we cannot say quien over here. Where is the coffee maker who I bought? That is not making any sense. So, que can be used for people or things. However, quien can only be related to people. Okay, so then again, here, the relative pronoun quien refers only to people, and it is often used after a preposition or the personal a. In previous lessons, we have already learned about the word a that usually refers to people. Quien has only two forms, like I explained, quien for singular and quienes for plural. Ejemplos. ¿Son las chicas de quienes me hablaste la semana pasada? Are they the girls that you told me about last week? Eva, a quien conocí anoche es mi nueva vecina. Eva, whom I met last night, is my new neighbor. Okay? So we can also see that happening, whenever we have singular, whenever we have plural, we have to make sure that we use the correct pronoun. Like I was mentioning before as well, quien or quienes is occasionally used instead of que in clauses set off by commas, okay? What does this mean? Sometimes I want to emphasize some information, and I can put this between two commas, and this is going to be like a little bit of extra information that I'm throwing in there, but I'm focusing on the fact that Lola, she's a doctor, right? And I'm throwing in there that she's also Cuban, okay? So I'm not really focusing so much on the fact that goes in commas. That is just like an extra piece of information. What I really want to state is that Lola is a doctor. And then if we look at the second one, it says, su tía, que es alemana, ya llegó. So if you can look at both of those, if we remove the information that goes between the commas, it is still understandable. Okay, we can say Lola es médica or su tía ya llegó. I am just throwing in there a little bit extra information, and I'm saying that Lola, she's a doctor, but she's also Cuban. And over here, the aunt has arrived, and this aunt is German. So I'm just throwing in there that extra piece of information, and that goes in between those commas. But like I said, if we remove that piece of information, the statement is still clear. So unlike que and quien, lo que, so that's another one, lo que doesn't refer to a specific noun, and that's what I was explaining over here. Remember, I said, this is all what we said. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, but this is actually the example that we can see in here. So that means that I don't really say, or I don't really explain what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, lo que me molesta es el calor. What bothers me is the heat, okay? Lo que quiero es una casa. What I want is a house. It's just to emphasize a little bit what I want or what bothers me, okay? So it is connected in there. And here we have just a couple more examples. Este supermercado tiene todo lo que necesito. It has everything that I need, and a Samuel no le gustó lo que le dijo Violeta. I don't know what she said, but he didn't like it. So those are two more